What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Jordan Wheeler with RTR Vehicles, and in today's episode we're installing the RTR wide body flares for your 18 to 22 Ford Mustang. For this installation you'll need 10mm socket, 3mm hex socket, socket wrench, 10mm wrench, 7/16 wrench, angle grinder, reciprocator saw, Nutsert tool, marker, drill, 1/8 drill bit, 1/4 drill bit, 19/64 drill bit, 5/16 roller broach, body clip remover, trim remover, measuring tape, heat gun, scissors, painter's tape, caulk gun, seam sealer, Cleco tool, Cleco pins, primer, rubberized undercoat, and you're also going to want to pick up some 18 gauge steel and have access to a welder. Before we get started, it's very important for me to let you know this is one of the few installations on our website that requires permanent modification of your vehicle. You will be cutting both the front and rear fenders. We here at RTR understand more than anybody else what it's like to get into the garage, get our hands dirty, and do some work on our own machines. But we also understand the value of a certified, qualified technician to handle the work for you when you don't feel fully comfortable. So make sure that you read through the instructions in their entirety, as well as watch the full length of this video before making your first cuts. With the vehicle elevated and the battery disconnected, remove the wheels and tires from the vehicle. Starting at the front, if your vehicle is a GT model, use a heat gun or a hair dryer to soften the 3M tape on the 5.0 badge. Then take your flat edge trim remover to lift the badge. After the badges have been removed and any residue cleaned, use painter's tape to cover your fender and part of the front bumper. Next, use your body clip removal tool to remove the 13 plastic rivets as well as the 2 push pin plastic rivets securing the fender liner in place. Then remove the fender liner from the vehicle. With the fender liner removed, remove the outer 10mm flange nut from the stud block. The fender cut will pass through this area and remove the stud. Cut out the front fender template and tape to the vehicle's fender. Your main location identifiers are set up for the driver's side of the vehicle, but will be used on the passenger side as well. I placed a crease on the location line to easily spot this on the passenger side of the vehicle. The front line will line up with the bumper to fender body line. Using a marker, outline the template onto the painter's tape. Using your cutting wheel, follow the marker line to cut the front fender. Once cut, apply a layer of primer to the edge to prevent paint from peeling or chipping. Prepare the fender flare for installation by taping the outer edges for marking. Along the top edge of the flare, measure 3/8 of an inch in and down from the rear corner. Then measure every 5.5 inches out from the corner across the top of the flare. Then you'll measure 3/8 of an inch down on each line. Along the bottom edge of the flare, measure 3/8 of an inch in and down from the rear corner. Then measure every 3.5 inches out from the corner across the bottom of the flare. For the rear edge of the flare, I measured the distance between the bottom corner mark and the top corner mark, then mark the center for drilling. For the bumper cap, mark each of the 3 corners 3/8 of an inch in. Then measure the center from the top corner to the next front edge corner. Place the flare up to the fender, making sure that the edge of the bumper cap lines up with the fender bumper line and the headlight line. Tape the flare to the fender and the bumper cap to the flare. Alignment is critical. Take your time and ensure the flare does not move. Using a 1/8 drill bit, begin drilling your pilot holes into the flare and onto the fender. Install the Cleco pins into these holes to secure the flares and maintain proper alignment. Once completed, remove the flares from the vehicle and set them aside. Using a single 19/64 drill bit, drill the center of the bumper cap. Connect the 2 flare pieces and mark your fender. Then drill this with the 19/64 bit as well. You can then bolt these pieces together using the 1/4 20 bolt, nut, and fender washers. Now using your 5/16 rotor broach, enlarge the holes on the vehicle fenders and the bumper. After the holes have been drilled out, install the 1024 Nutserts using your riv nut tool. and reinstall the flares using the 1024 button head cap screws and washers. With the fenders mounted and the liner back in place, we need to remove the curved section to make way for the extension. Using your air saw, remove this lip. Place the RTR Fender Liner extension up against the OEM Fender Liner, texture side down. There are two cutouts on the front of the extension. One is for 2018 plus vehicles and the other is used on the 2015 to 17 vehicles. We'll be using the front cutout and lining it up where the bumper cap meets the fender flare. Drill 6 1/4 inch holes in the liner extension. Then secure it using the supplied plastic rivets. Place 2 at the rear of the extension, 3 in the center, and 1 is placed up front. Using a heat gun, thermoform the front lower inner fender to gain tire clearance. You will also do this to the rear lower inner fender area as well. At the rear of the vehicle, remove the rear liner. This is held in place with a series of plastic screw rivets, nub screws on fasteners, plastic rivets, and plastic anchors. Using painter's tape, cover the working area of the vehicle. Cut out the rear fender template and tape to the vehicle's fender. Align the front mark with the rocker panel to quarter panel seam and the quarter panel to rear bumper seam at the rear. Once in place, mark the outline with a marker. It is also a good idea to place the flare against the vehicle and mark the outline of the flare as well. Using your cutting wheel, follow the mark to cut the outer fender. Using an angle grinder with a sanding disc, separate the outer and inner fenders at the edge. Then using your air reciprocating saw, cut out the inner fender. Locate the fender liner post at the lower front of the wheel well and draw a line at 3.5 inches and 6 inches. At the 6 inch mark, draw a vertical line parallel to the fender's edge. Mark the rear inner fender with a horizontal line 1 inch above the rearmost liner post and small vertical line 3 inch inboard from the fender cut. Make a downward angle line from the vertical line at approximately 140 degrees or to where the two layers meet. Connect the two lines with the 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock positions. Cut out the remaining rear inner fender material with your air grinder and cutting wheel. Peel back about 1.5 inches of tape from the fender. Using a sanding or wire wheel, remove the paint down to the bare metal and apply a weld-through primer. Cut out the rear inner fender extension template to create your extensions. Place the fender extension in the work area and tack weld the extension into place. You'll then cut off the excess fender extension and apply seam seal to the edge of the extensions. Once the sealer is dry, apply undercoat to the work area. Prepare the fender flare for installation by taping the outer edges for marking. Along the top edge of the flare, measure 3/8 of an inch in and down from the front corner. Mark the flare for drilling with approximately 6 inches of spacing along the top edge with 3/8 of an inch downward. Mark 3.5 inch spacing between the sides and bottom. Then mark the rear angle halfway between the top mark and the back corner with 3/8 of an inch downward. Placing the flare onto the vehicle and taping it into place, make sure the panel is properly aligned. Drill 1/8 inch holes into the fender and onto the quarter panel. Install Cleco pins into the holes to secure the flare and maintain proper alignment. Once all holes have been drilled, remove the RTR flare from the vehicle and using a 5/16 rotobroach, enlarge the holes in the vehicle's fender. Then install your 1024 Nutserts into the fender using your riv nut tool. Carefully install the flare onto the vehicle using your 1024 button head cap screws and washers, starting at the center and working outward. Do not fully tighten any of the fasteners until every one has been successfully started. Make a tape line at the front and rear of the inner fender liner and trim back to gain sufficient wheel and tire clearance. Your flares can now be removed and prepped for paint and final assembly.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. I hope you found it informative and useful in the installation of your part. Make sure to head over to rtrvehicles.com for our full lineup of Mustang, Ranger, F-150, Bronco, and Bronco Sport parts, as well as a sweet line of merch that makes you look killer on track days. I'm Jordan Wheeler with RTR Vehicles, and I'll catch you on the other side of fun. Whoa!